How do you get started with an APA paper if you're facing a blank document? It's what I want to talk about in this video, as well as some of the internal formatting things you have to be aware of, like typeface, size of your font, how many spaces after a period, some of those nitty gritty kinds of things. Okay, so to get us started, I'm going to just paste some text, some drafted text, into this Google Doc for us to work with. I'm not going to include a title page or an abstract in this because we just want to talk about general formatting and how to make that happen. Okay, but no, if I was turning this in as an APA paper, I would need to add the title page and the abstract. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do in any document that I'm turning in is I'm going to ignore the recommended title that Google Docs just gave me, and I'm going to name my paper just as I need to name all of my papers, with my last name, an underscore, and then the title of the assignment. Okay. Now, you'll see that Google Docs is automatically set to Arial 11-point font. That's great if you're writing EdTPA. It's not so great if you're writing an APA paper. Okay, so as you're writing, many of you might like Arial, many of you might have a preference of a different typeface, but my recommendation right away would be, as you write, to go ahead and highlight all of your text after you get some things started and automatically change it to Cambria or Times New Roman 12-point font. Okay, that is what APA requires. A serif font like Cambria or Times New Roman or Garamond, right? Those are the three that are in the manual, in 12-point font. Now, APA also requires double spacing, but I'll tell you, I don't like to write my drafts double spaced. I can't see the shape of a whole paragraph in that way, so I tend to draft single spaced, knowing that I'm going to change it to double spaced later. Okay, now you'll also notice a couple things right away in this paper, like blue text. I tend to draft all of my writing in blue text, and there's a very specific reason I do this. Because when I open up a paper that I've been working on for a while, like you will with your excerpt commentary units in this class, or your master's thesis, or your honors thesis, it can take a long time when you're rereading through a draft to get back into the paper and to know what still needs work. When I draft a paper in blue text and then I change it into black text as I finish off a paragraph, then I have a very visual way of detecting where in a paper I need to spend some time editing. So most of this particular literature review is done. However, I do have a big chunk about the pencil that I need to go back in and edit. So let's talk a little bit about some of the internal formatting inside the paper here that we're seeing in this blue text, and we'll make some changes together. The first thing you need to know that's not real obvious in APA is right here, right? That space after a period. In APA, you use one space after a period instead of two. Forever, it's been two spaces after a period because of old typewriter functions. It's finally one space after a period. But if you're like me and you learn to type with two spaces after a period, it's taking me a while to change the automatic muscle movements of my thumb on the space bar. So no, one space after a period is the rule of thumb. I also want to talk about parenthetical citations here for a minute. Okay, if we look my parenthetical citations, they're pretty incomplete in my draft. Okay, and so are some of my notes to myself. This one isn't even a parenthetical citation. This one is. This one is a note to myself. So let's read this sentence here. A constantly present or always around, better word, object, the pencil has often gone unnoticed. Petrosky, XXXX. So when I was writing this sentence in my paper, I couldn't remember the date of Petrosky's writing. And we know in APA that the author's name always has to be glued to the date. I'll say that again, because it's the one thing that people get stuck on as they're first learning APA. The author's name is always glued to the date. But when you're drafting, you don't want to mess up the flow of your writing always by going, oh crap, what date did Petrosky write his article in or his book in? Let me go look that up, and like forget what it is I was trying to say. So often when I'm writing a draft, I will, right here, I will leave myself a note for the citation. I will put X's as placeholders for the dates of a citation. Look down here, I didn't even know, right? I couldn't even remember who said it. I know it was one of 2 or 3 authors that I was reading, but I just put cite XXX. That means, and I highlighted it in bright yellow, so I'd remember to go back and fix it later. Okay, this means when I'm editing, I might focus on all blue text and I might clean up the writing, but any citation that I just don't want to look up right now, I'll highlight in yellow and leave a placeholder for. This makes sure that I remember to cite it later, but it doesn't kill the flow of my thinking or writing. Okay, so that's one thing that can make your life a little easier. I also sometimes run into the issue of, I'm pretty sure that was Weaver, but I need to double check that later. So I'll leave myself some question marks, right? In this case, I know that Petrovsky wrote his book in 1989, so I can go ahead and highlight that and take out the highlight, and I'll know that that's done. Here, back at the beginning of this sentence, right, I had left myself a note of, I need a better word. When I was writing, I was like, okay, I know pencils, they're everywhere. They're all over the place around me, but they always go unnoticed. We don't really talk about pencils. Well, there's a word for constantly present or always around, a stronger word. That word is ubiquitous. So in the process of revising and editing myself in APA, I can find that better word, put it in, and then take out the note to myself to find a better word. And APA likes strong words. If you can replace 3 weak words with a strong word, you want to try to do that. So that doesn't mean you stick in a bunch of $100 SAT words just for fun, but you've got to make your writing be strong and focused. Okay. Other things in blue, right? This indeed, I'll tell you right now, was 2017. And Petrovsky, we know, was 1989. So we'll go ahead and clean that up. This one, as I go back to edit, I know was the same author, Mio Downick. So I can clean that up and remove the highlight. And now that I kind of know that I'm done cleaning this paragraph, I'll just change it to black. Right, that leaves me, again, look how much more of my paper I'm now done with. This citation right here is also highlighted, right? So we've mostly been using citations for one author, but sometimes 2 authors in a literature review when you're trying to see what the world is saying about the topic that you're interested in writing in, 2 authors will say the same thing. That's great, they agree, that makes your paper stronger, so you want to cite both of them. However, there's a problem with this particular citation. When you're listing multiple authors, they're always going to be in alphabetical order. Okay, so we're going to move Petrovsky before Weaver, right? Because P comes before W in the alphabet song. Because they are 2 different sources, Petrovsky is one source and Weaver is one source, right? They are separated right here by that semicolon. That's how I know they're 2 different sources on my works cited page. So that's done, and this section is also now finished. Okay. As I scroll down through the paper, I also see that I left myself a note right here to deal with this subheading. Okay, I knew I needed a subheading here as I changed topics. I left myself a note of 2 different subheadings, a fascination with materials or why materials. I think I like a fascination with materials better because it answers or kind of indicates better to the reader what's going on with materials. Why materials might be, why do I have to pay attention to materials? Why are materials cool? Why are materials is something we have to talk about at all, right? But I think a fascination with materials gets my reader to know that I like materials and they're fascinating, and we're going to talk about how and why, and all of those other things are now subsumed into one focused title. So I'm going to change the color of my text because I'm done revising that section. I'm going to take off the highlight. Okay, so as we continue to scroll in, we can see that most of this writing is completely done. I do want to point out this right here. So far in our videos, we've talked about single authors and always gluing the dates to the author's names. We also saw Hetland, Winner, Vanema, and Sheridan all listed out earlier in a grouping of authors. But if there's a lot of authors, if there's more than 3 or 4 in a paper or in a particular book, you don't have to list all of them out all of the time. That becomes very visually cumbersome for your reader. That's where this comes in, et al. Okay, et al just means and all of the other authors. So you can write in Hetland, et al., Hetland and all the other authors, 2013, key study said such and such. Okay, so know when you're looking in your manual at when and how to cite inside a paper that you can use et al. When there are multiple authors. Okay, so body text of your paper has to be Cambria, Times New Roman, Garamond, right? A serif font. It has to be 12-point font. Okay, it also has to have properly finished parenthetical citations or in-sentence citations for all of your sources, and you want to use clear writing, right? That gets rid of all the extra words. There's one space after a paragraph. And once I'm done with my draft and I kind of know the heart of the writing is done, then I can go in, whoops, dictionary. Then I can go in and double space the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to double space my paper. Okay. I'm also going to then go into insert, headers and footers. And I'm going to go ahead and put my running head in there. Now, here's something that happens a lot. You forget that this also needs to be the same typeface as the rest of your paper. Don't forget to change the running head to match the rest of your paper. I'm also going to insert page numbers on the top right, and we want the version where there's a page number on page 1, that title page, and every other page. Okay, now Google Drive does this. They put that top right page number in and they put it right next to your header, so you have to physically move it. Sorry. Take that up with Google, not with me. I always have to check that. Okay, so now you've got your running head, your page numbers, all of your basic formatting spaces complete. So that's how you kind of think about getting started with the body of a text.